Thank you for joining us on the Judges of Rathe podcast. My name is Shay Ashby, and I'm joined by Felix Chung.
We are happy to be joined by Yichin Liu today. Yichin, also known as Mao Zenith, is a prominent member of the Flesh and Blood judge community, as well as the community at large. You may recognize him from writing guest articles on the official Flesh and Blood website, to his helpful posts on Reddit or various Discords, to being an active L2 judge and the leader of the information and content team for the judge program. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, glad to be on here. It's been a couple episodes. I know we were talking about me being on the podcast from episode 1, so we're a little late, but finally made it on.
Yeah, we're really happy you could join us. So you've just been scheming in the background to change the name of our podcast when we're just 4 or 5 episodes in. So thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You can thank Klaus for that, actually. That's his fault.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Yichin, I'm really glad we could finally connect here. And before we delve deep into all of the topics we're going to tackle today, can you just help us to get you know a little bit better as a person, just like an elevator pitch about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Yichin Liu. I am... Man, should I say my age? I don't feel like I should say my age. I've been playing Flesh and Blood since Arcane Rising. I'm 31 years old, and I have been kind of in the TCG community for about, I want to say 12 to 13 years at this point. So I'm not a super diehard veteran or anything, but I do have a decent amount of TCG experience.
Okay. I mean, how many years does it take to become a diehard veteran? Seems like a lot of experience to me.
I mean, honestly, you can probably become diehard within 3 months. Honestly, it just kind of gets up to just start playing games. So I guess that's not very that's not a very hard bar to meet.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Where are you from?
Yeah, I'm from San Jose. So that is in California, USA. That is the site of the World's 2022 event. So if you were there and remember the giant tent, that's my hometown. That's our claim to fame, being very, very bad of a venue.
No, it was great. We read your article. Shay and I were at San Jose. That taco place that you recommended, incredible.
Yeah, La Vix. Yeah, it's a classic. I've been in San Jose all my life, or most of my life. I've been hopping around, from China to U.S. to other side of the U.S. But I've been in San Jose for about good 20, 25 years now. I work as a middle manager in the medical device industry, is how I can probably describe it best to a layman. Basically, I manage production and support for an X-ray company, so it's kind of boring, very technical, and not exactly the most attractive job out there.
I mean, it seems important to me. Sounds complicated, and no, that's really cool. Besides TCGs and Flesh and Blood, do you have any other hobbies or interests?
Yeah. Well, you might not realize it when you look at me, but I am a pretty avid outdoorsy person, as well as a pretty avid traveler. So, I enjoy traveling in my spare time. I try to go out to do nature stuff at least once a month or so. And aside from that, the usual early 20s hobbies, which is video games, anime, all that sort of stuff.
I see. I mean, I bet you like traveling because one of your pictures got featured on the official Flesh and Blood Twitter, I think it was, with the first official Flesh and Blood game in Antarctica. I think Shay was really impressed with that when he saw it.
Yeah. Actually, I had some backstory on that. When I was kind of talking with Josh and Klaus, the judge program managers, about the upcoming months and when I was available, I mentioned to them I was going to Antarctica, and then Josh casually mentioned, "Oh, well, if you can get some pictures with a Fab card there, that'd be pretty great." So I brought along a Reiner versus Dorinthia deck and a Cold Foil Coat of Frost, and I basically found as many opportunities as possible to take pictures, which is honestly not that much with FAT cards.
What was the drive to go to Antarctica, and like also how did you come about going there, and what did you do while you were down there?
Yeah, there's generally two reasons why people will go to Antarctica. The reason I went is the less impressive reason, which is tourism. So how the tourism usually works is that, at least on our side of the globe, which is like the America side of the globe, most of the tourism that goes down there is going to go down by boat, and we're going to be kind of traveling along the Antarctic Peninsula to visit islands. Um, Usually with boat tourism, you kind of think of like, oh, it's like a cruise or something. It's like super cushy, super like cramped and all that. This is generally the cruises down to Antarctica will be half research and half tourist boats. So essentially, they use the tourism as a way to subsidize trips for researchers to do research, as well as get a couple of extra hands to help perform the research. So
Okay.
it wasn't like a typical cruise where you're just like lounging on the deck and soaking in the sunlight. You're doing a decent amount of like fun sciencey stuff. You're doing like a lot of whale watching. You're doing a lot of like wildlife observations, and you're doing a lot of like data gathering for like, for example, like bird spotting, cloud spotting, and like some sort of like deep sea like um, plankton level measuring. I think that I don't remember the actual term for it.
Yeah. I'm going to just ask one more question on this. Was there a highlight to the trip down to Antarctica?
Honestly, most of the times that we were off the boat and just like exploring the islands, that's probably the best part. People always say the Drake's Passage, which is the strip of sea between Argentina and Antarctica. That's always the most memorable because you're getting rocked around. But once you get to Antarctica itself, it's like relatively calm, relatively desolate, which I love, and the views are just insanely beautiful. Lots of blues, lots of blacks, lots of whites. It's very different from what people are used to.
Nice. I feel like I could go on and ask you like 1,000 more questions because I find this very fascinating, but we will move on with the interview. You mentioned that you started Flesh and Blood around, was it ARC, I think?
Mm-hmm.
What got you into the game, or how did you hear about the game?
Yeah, so how we got into the game, me and my partner in crime, Oliver Fee, we run a channel called OKNY. That didn't exist when we started the game, but basically we were looking for something to do during the pandemic, and we were just looking at random card games because I was like, I don't want to play, some other like the big card games. I don't want to play Pokemon. I don't want to play Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't want to play Magic. So we ended up looking at Flesh and Blood, and my first impression of the game was, why are these cards so expensive? I'm never going to spend $150 on a cold foil Mask of Momentum. That's just nonsense.
Yeah.
So we bought a couple decks, and we started playing just before Crucible released. And at some point, I think it was pretty right before Crucible or right after Crucible, I get together with Oliver, and I see he's bought a Mask of Momentum. And I'm like, oh no, Oliver, you succumbed. And he's like, no, don't worry. I bought you a Brave Forge Bracers to help even the odds a bit.
Okay.
So that was our descent, the start of our descent.
Nice. And so, along with jumping into the game, you mentioned the podcast. You're also part of the information and content team. Mm-hmm. What led you to kind of down this path to become so involved with Flesh and Blood?
That's a good question. For the most part, I think the reason why I was motivated in the first place was because I wasn't seeing the type of content that I wanted to see. Back during early Crucible and late Arc, most of the online content of Flesh and Blood was either Session Blood or box opening. So I felt that Session Blood was a bit too competitive for my tastes. And box opening, obviously, I just want like fun decks to build. I don't really care about, box openings and values and stuff. So I started writing just like guides for new players. and just like a bunch of like casual focused stuff. Around this time, Oliver and I started posting podcasts and videos of just like gameplay. He did most of the gameplay. I did the podcast and some of the written content. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, people started liking that, even though it was very low quality. And ever since then, it's kind of spiraled where I just like start getting more and more niche in my content, just to help encourage people to do better than mine and make more content like that. So yeah, it's basically just like I identified where something was lacking,
yep.
and made it, and hopefully somebody came along and said I can do better, and then made more of it.
No, I think that's a really good starting spot. And, I think you're a little hard on yourself. The stuff that you guys put out is pretty good. It is a lot of fun to listen to you. And I think, part of the natural conversation that happens is what people find engaging and want to get more from you. So that's sort of like your path into the podcast. What about getting into like the info and content team?
Yeah, I guess I should talk about how I got into judging first. The path to judging, I was a Magic judge for quite some time before quitting in 2017. And I knew when they announced that the Calling of Las Vegas was going to be run by CFB, I was like, oh, I want to do that. I know the game. I know a lot of people on the CFB circuit don't know the game. And so I just emailed CFB and I was like, hey, I see you guys are going to do Flesh and Blood. I know the game. I am a judge for you. I've judged for you. Get me in and I will contribute positively to the experience, hopefully. So that's kind of when I started taking judging more seriously for the program. And that's kind of when I started seriously acting as a community manager / general like figurehead in our local community to like organize our local community. From there, it kind of just spiraled more and more where eventually I noticed that the Flesh and Blood judge program was lacking a real way to organize information. And Klaus, around the time, also wanted to kind of get a team together to help manage the social media and manage, educational content for judges. And so I was like, well, that's going to be a fit. I'm going to apply directly and email him. So in other words, me getting this position is basically sending a bunch of emails to people that I've never contacted before and telling them that I'm a good fit.
Nice, forcing your way in. I like it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So at this point in your, I guess, time with the game, what keeps you interested in what you're doing and what keeps you going from here?
Yeah, I think I've noticed a lot of people who are involved with the game. They tend to be very into the game they spend a lot of energy on the game for I want to say like 1 year, maybe 2 years, and then they kind of burn out. I think I've been pretty good at avoiding that burnout, mostly because I take a backseat role to the actual game itself. And I mostly treat this as a fun way to socialize and hang out with friends.
Okay.
I think that's a very good way, a healthy way to approach any sort of hobby, especially competitive stuff. So I've been, just taking it slow, taking it one project at a time. And I never force myself to finish projects, which is, I think, the worst and best part about what I do, where I just have a bunch of unfinished projects because I have lost interest in them. But at the same time, it's made sure that my level of motivation never kind of dies down.
That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of what you described really resonates with me because Shay and I, we're not just judges as well. We do try to contribute to the community and focus locally and all of that. But you've managed to keep that up to a very high level, both locally and online for many years. So that's a great tip to how to avoid burning out. I would like to ask you to go a little bit deeper, though, and maybe this is a bit of a personal question for me, because I remember seeing your name, your username, Mao Zenith, on the Purple Discord, like transcribing the James White keynote interviews for hundreds of hungry fans, including our Discord. I think some people are big fans of yours. Every time there's a there's a keynote, they're looking out for your texts. And same thing when I'm just looking on Reddit at the Flesh and Blood Reddit, I'll see your name popping up there with this very well put together guide for how new communities can get started with like commons and rares. So my first question at least, is you seem to really go the extra mile putting things out there into the internet, into the void. Like, what motivates you to take that step?
Yeah, like I said before, it's mostly I'm seeing a lack of content in a specific area, or I'm seeing content that's good but doesn't have enough reach. So I think you touched briefly on like my commoner decks and stuff like that. I started making those for our locals, and this was around the same time that Joey Sinart from Decks and Draughts started doing his stuff. And he was capturing most of the Midwest audience, and I was mostly focused on putting it to the terminally online audience that didn't really have as much exposure to the Twitter side of things. So I guess the question, the answer to your question is, I don't know, honestly. I see something, I'm like, I could do this, and I try to make it so that it's not completely embarrassing to me when I read it, and then people think it's good quality apparently, and they respond in kind.
Yeah.
So
It must bring you.
rambly.
Yeah, no, that's great. It must bring you a sense of satisfaction, I hope, like to maybe spread joy and spread information like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and this is not very humble of me to say, but I think it's very nice to see people thank you for doing stuff that you wanted to do. And so you're kind of like, when I was like churning out articles and I was like, really in the swing of things, I was kind of just like riding that high of like, oh, people like me, I can write more of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you need somebody to start somewhere, right? And when you get into doing content, whether it be writing or making podcasts or videos, you yourself as the creator expect to be the best and be putting out the best that you possibly can. And I like where your head was at, that you were going to put something out that was good, and hopefully that spurs other people to strive to do better or something along that lines. I think we're really hard on ourselves to be the best and always be the best. And, it's okay to not start at the top. You can work your way up, and that's a really cool, way to look at it.
Yeah. I think it was around the time of like Uprising or Everfest meta when LSS, I heard that LSS was trying to contact me to write for them. And I was like, wow, I've made it to the big leagues now.
There was one other thing that was mentioned. I think we talked about it on our podcast when it comes to creating stuff, in that if you don't see it, then you should be the one to create it. It's been mentioned on Twitter, I think on podcasts. And for anybody out there that's looking to do something like this that they don't see, you can be that first person to start putting out the content that you want to see, that you feel like is missing in the sphere. And again, it's you just go out and do it. And I think people will jump on board, and this community is very supportive. Like for anybody that's afraid of doing it, people are always positive, sharing ideas, because it's not an easy thing to start on your own or with a friend and just jump out and do.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I approach it like this: if you make it and people don't like it, they will make stuff that's better, and you will be that spark that drives them to do it, right? You'll be that stepping stone, and there's definitely a lot of value in that as well. You're the motivator in that sense, and obviously if it's good, well, then you're the one who's motivating everybody else to to try to reach your heights.
Yeah, awesome. Wanted to move into sort of the Pro Tour Los Angeles. Like you and Felix were there a couple of weeks ago. We don't have to talk specifically about PTLA, but do you still get excited for events like Pro Tour and callings, or is it just kind of like another day at the office for you at this point?
I want to say the travel part, at least, it's kind of gotten second nature. I used to be pretty excited about traveling. Nowadays, I kind of just like click on some plane tickets, watch my bank account go down, and just
Yeah.
be like, okay, I'm going to do this now. But definitely for the events itself, I am usually pretty excited for them, especially when it comes to the keynotes. Um, I started transcribing the keynotes because people weren't doing it before, right?
Mhm.
And slowly, I've noticed that other people are stepping up and either streaming the keynote themselves or are doing something else and helping with like the transliterations, transcribing all the information. Um, but even so, like just like being there and enjoying like all the news announcements, all the like hype and all the atmosphere, just being with friends in a big giant warehouse.
Mhm.
It's definitely very exciting still.
Yeah, cool. It's kind of like like you mentioned before, like an excuse to socialize with people.
Yeah.
So before the keynote, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the judge conference happens before like the keynote speech.
Yep. Usually it happens on the Thursday before, and so for judges, it's some people go, some people won't go. Totally understand if you don't go because it costs extra money to book a plane for or book a hotel for an extra day.
Right.
Um, but they're usually pretty good. This time, I think we focused more on mentorship and guidance as a general overarching topic. Um, and that was definitely a little bit of a departure from our previous conferences. But that's pretty cool. And yeah, everybody gets judge packs and all that, so there's obviously some incentive to go.
Yeah, I assume like Felix, you would highly recommend going to the conference as a judge if you can, swing the extra day.
Yeah, of course. The fact that they give you a judge pack for as in recognition for your attendance there is really helpful, but of course there's the extra hotel day that you're taking an extra day off work because it's on the Thursday before the Friday main event starts. So you have to take all of that into consideration for your own personal circumstances. But yeah, this conference was really great. Like Yichin said, a lot of mentorship stuff. We got to hear a lot of judges from all over the world present. Emilian gave a great presentation. He was our guest on the previous episode. Um, and yeah, there was a fun presentation this time. There was like a quiz. Our team won, so
that,
that's the
that
highlight
one
for
was
me.
you were carried. You were
No,
carried.
excuse me.
Can you elaborate a little bit more for those that weren't there?
Yeah, so I mean the quiz was really a one-off. I think it was Chris from Australia and Sebastian from Poland put together a great quiz. We just answered with our phones, rules questions, flesh and blood miscellaneous questions. It was a great time.
Nice.
But a lot of other presentations as well throughout the day. And toward the end of the day, there was the announcement delivered by Josh Scott and Klaus rolling out the branding and the refresh of the judge program. So that was really cool too.
Yeah, yeah. I was furiously trying to coordinate with our team back on Discord, just to make sure that the announcement timings were right.
But yeah, conference, great time. Highly recommended. If any judges listening have the opportunity to go and can swing it. Great learning opportunity, great chance to even meet with people in a more casual setting. Everyone's wearing street clothes, no one's wearing their judge uniform, so you can get a little bit more sense of people's personalities and all that. So yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
overall good time.
Good. Did you want to cover off anything at PTLA specifically for you, or were there any highlights or?
Not particularly. So PTLA, most of the time for these like large events, I end up working as a floor judge or like a position that is slightly higher than floor judge. So I'm generally considered to be like a low level judge, and I don't have too many responsibilities during the actual event, which is nice because it's just basically a day where you just walk around, watch people play games, answer a couple of rules questions, and kind of just make sure that nothing is on fire and all the players are being attended to. So I worked for 2 days this weekend, Friday, Saturday. Honestly, Flesh and Blood players are really nice in that they tend to be very nice to everybody. Obviously, speaking generally, but I haven't had too many issues with Flesh and Blood players at large events. So honestly, it's tough to judge and feel like you're doing something when all the players are just solving problems by themselves.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. It's a good feeling to have.
Yeah. We even noticed that at a lower level, like at the PQs and RTNs, that a lot of the time that players really want to just solve their own problems when they can. So yeah. I see that as well.
Yeah. And generally that doesn't mean you should like de-emphasize your rules knowledge and all that. But it does mean that most of the time your role as a judge is going to be babysitter / logistics manager for most of the event. That means that as long as you know generally what you're doing on a macro scale, most of the rules, quals, and all that's not a big issue. I say that, and I'm sure several of the people listening will be like, well, actually, and you shouldn't be saying this, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. And if you're ever like daunted to try becoming a judge because you're not sure how these large events work, most of the time there's going to be somebody who's going to show you the ropes, and it's pretty easy to get into the rhythm of things. You kind of just mind your own corner, and you make sure that nothing is on fire, and you just go ahead and just judge your event like a normal large side event.
Right.
Yeah. I think another important point that you brought up here is you mentioned that you worked 2 days. You worked Friday, Saturday. I worked 2 days as well. I worked Saturday, Sunday. But the important part there is some people, if they're thinking about judging, if they're a more casual judge or they also play, you can still enjoy the event for one day. You're not locked into judging for 3 straight days. In my case, I was able to spend all of Friday as a tourist and spend too much money, see the artists, cheer for my friends, and do all of that stuff, and then work the other 2 days. And I'm sure you got the chance to do the same when you were off on Sunday.
Yeah, like I think Sunday I just told everybody I was rooming with, I was like, I'll drop in late after the Battle Harden starts, and I'll be playing Cube all day. And that's my entire itinerary for the day.
Yeah. So the big message is, yeah, it's that it can be flexible. If you are worried about your first, if you've never done a big event like a tier 3 or tier 4 event, but you were curious about maybe applying, just don't worry. There's different shifts that could be scheduled. I think some events are big enough, and the demand is highest on Saturdays. Like some people will even work just 1 day on the Saturday, and then they have 2 days on the Friday and the Sunday to explore the events. Or you could do what Yichin and I did for LA, work 2 of 3 days. There's different flexibility there depending on what the TO needs as well.
Yeah, I will say that most of the time, low-level judges will need to sign on for 2 days at minimum, just to make sure that they're getting enough education, and to make sure that they're not just being brought on and registered as another contractor for 1 day of work. The other thing that you should keep in mind when applying to large events is that for the most part, I think 10 to 20% of the total number of judges will be selected from new judges who are inexperienced and need more experience at the large event scale. So for high demand events, for example, Worlds Osaka, there's going to be a lot of floor judges applying. So don't be discouraged if you don't get in. Especially because a lot of times these tournament organizers will try to target judges in areas that don't have too many opportunities for big events, and make sure that those judges there will get opportunities to judge. So getting in definitely is somewhat difficult for large events. But once you're in, you're in, and kind of just like reapply for every event, and you'll get into most of them.
Yeah, okay. That's some really good insight. Some of the stuff that we haven't necessarily heard before. So I really thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, hopefully I don't get punished and bonked for sharing that.
Take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah. My opinions are my own.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're the one that has editorial control here, so you would be punishing yourself, maybe.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. I guess just one other fun thing is that after each event, there tends to be like a staff party. So this is where we get to hang out with each other just as a team, get to shake some hands. Yichin and I had a really good conversation with a couple judges from Japan, actually. And I think it was Satoru that was doing a lot of the same work as you did in your early days, right, for your community.
Yeah, Satoru locally. And I know Hiro. They're kind of the ones that are actively traveling to get judge experience for Japanese judges, and so we had a pretty productive conversation as to like what the judges in that region need. So a lot of what we're going to talk about later, I think, is going to be based off of kind of these conversations as well as other conversations I've had with judges over the weekend.
Awesome. So our next topic, it's tough to transition away from LA, and we're intentionally moderating ourselves here, because if I were just told to gush about how much fun I had at the event and how great it was to meet everyone, from yourself, Yichin, to Sebastian and the Japanese judges, like everyone, like we would be here all day. But suffice it to say, judging at big events, being part of a team, just having the chance to learn from judges from all over the world, it is an experience that I can't speak highly enough of. But yeah, let's move on and talk a little bit about the information and content team here, Yichin. So first of all, could you just let the judges listening to this podcast what the objective is of this team, and really what is the team?
Yeah, so the information and content team, originally it was just the information team. Basically, our goal is to provide communication, education in ways that are public to the wider judge community and the player base. So in other words, we have a lot of teams in the judge program. We have like the policy team, we have the rules team, we have all that. And they do stuff that is occasionally public facing. So that's like the rules team will release their release notes, and they'll be able to talk about and make edits based off the feedback from the community. Policy team will occasionally put out surveys as well as policy updates for the TRP. And we have a bunch of other teams that are doing various things, lots of them. Most of the time, they're going to be keeping to themselves. And it's our job, essentially, to take whatever news they have and to disseminate it to the general public. So we've come up with a few avenues for this. Generally, we have our Twitter account, we have our Facebook account, we have this podcast, and we have our judge blog, and all of those will serve different features. And so we're a pretty big team that's subdivided into 3 sub-teams. And all of us are basically committed to making sure that you, the listener / you, the test taker / you, the player, know what is up with the judge program, as well as are aware of any major changes to the judge program or announcements from the judge program, as well as have access to educational content that you can learn to be a judge or continue to educate yourself on new rules and changes in policy and all that. That was kind of long, but that's basically what we do. We post on Twitter, we post on Facebook, and we hopefully get information that's relevant to you.
No, it's a worthy description for a complicated task, right? Because there's so many different advanced teams and projects going on within the judge community, as well as day-to-day judging and celebrations of achievements that have happened and all of that. Like there is a lot of information to get out there if you had the resources to do so. So it could be worthy of a big team. So
Yeah.
overall, like, do you have any objectives? Like, do you have, like, what's your long-term vision for this team that you're building?
So the long-term vision, I will say. So let's talk about the long-term vision for each of our three teams, right? Because I think it's more, we can focus more on each of these teams' goals. We are subdivided into the information team, which handles all social media, the content team, which handles website content, and the podcast team, which is handling this podcast. As for the goals of each team, for the podcast team and for the information team, I want to get to the point where it's not an issue where we have judges or players being misinformed or not able to keep up with all of the news that's coming out with the judge program. So, in other words, when Klaus announces something, the goal of the team, if we have everything in place and everything's right, most judges will know within like a week of their announcement, maybe even a day. It's a very lofty goal because generally with communication, just posting an announcement usually isn't enough to get the message out. You have to make sure that people who won't usually be able to see it can see it. And so my goal for that team, for these two teams, is basically just make sure people are informed. For the content team, the goal of the team is to make sure that any educational content that a player or judge might need to better do what they want to do is readily available to them, and they have a wealth and backlog of information that they can use to help study for that. So, for example, studying for your L2 exam, if you need more information on a specific topic or you don't understand specific topics, you can just type in, I don't know, layers or type in replacement effects, and you'll be able to find plenty of articles, plenty of like explanations, videos even, of how these work, and obviously apply that to basically as many topics out there as possible, right? So it's not a team that has like a finite goal. It's more just like a continuing grind of making sure that everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Does our podcast have a goal? Do you have a vision for us?
Yeah, your objective is to survive.
Oh no. Good to know.
That's pretty much it. Unless you guys have a goal, I'm totally okay with you guys having a goal. But my goal is to make sure that you are comfortable, and you, when the time comes, either when you retire or when you die of old age, that we can hand off to somebody and continue the podcast for as long as the game is supported. And I assume James White is still alive.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's really great. Thanks for giving us a summary of the whole team and everything that it does. And yeah, big shout out to the Judge blog, and my personal favorite, just because I see it so often, the quiz questions that get posted to Facebook and on Discord and on Twitter are fantastic, and a couple of them have actually stumped me over the years. So fantastic job. If anyone doesn't know about them that's listening, and even if you're not on social media, they are posted on the Judge Hub Discord. These are great quizzes and fun questions to keep you sharp.
Yeah, they blow me away. The amount of questions that they can keep putting out on a weekly basis and them being very good is astounding to me. And they put a lot of effort into it. It's definitely a great place to do some extra learning.
Yeah, it was started by Jotrick, Private Void, so you can thank him next time you complain to him about Talishar bugs.
Fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I mean, have you heard any feedback from your efforts at outreach, Yichin, or how do you know that the work that you do is successful and reaching out to people?
I generally measure success by people being able to by people not complaining about things. So, in other words, if I don't see people complaining that they didn't know that this rule was changed, I measure that as a success. Or if I see people being like, "Oh yeah, this is what Klaus said," not whatever hearsay that I heard four telephones down the line, then I think of that as like a success. Um, it's hard to measure success for communication because um, successful communication doesn't really reward you with that much feedback, right? It's like, oh, thanks for letting me know, and that's it. But I have heard lots of feedback from both judges and players that they really enjoyed like judge quizzes. They enjoy like the judge. They enjoy the involvement of the um, Twitter and Discord, and they generally enjoy some of the articles that we put out. Obviously, kudos to all of our writers and guest writers. They're the ones who are responsible, not me. But a lot of that feedback is definitely heard and passed on. So um, as long as yeah, it's hard to say that. It's hard to say, but basically, as long as Klaus is happy, I'm happy.
Yep.
If he's not complaining about about not being able to like properly announce things, I think we're good.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Before we close things out here, Yichin, is there anything that you wanted to cover, or do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you want to share?
Yeah, so just wanted to say we're always looking out for guest articles and for other content that you think might be interesting for judges. So if you're listening to this and you have something that you want to like put out there, but you're not really sure how useful it'll be, just send us a message. Send either me or one of the team members a message, and most likely we'll be happy to put it on the judge blog and get your name published alongside whatever article that you want. Same thing that goes with like any ideas you have for like engagement or like any feedback you have for the team itself. Yeah, anything that you want to say to us, we're all ears, and we will make accommodations if you think things aren't going well.
Yeah. Do you have any shout outs or acknowledgments before we close the episode down here?
Shout outs to the team, information team, Jotrick, Sebastian, doing great. Scott, doing great. Shout outs to the podcast team. Felix, Shay, you're doing great. Yeah, nothing really.
No.
Just a couple shout outs to the team.
Thank you. And if people do want to reach out to you for anything content team related, or to volunteer to write a guest article, or if they're curious about commoner deck lists, how should they find you?
Yeah, so my Discord username is Malzenith, Malzenith. You can just message me. You can honestly find me on the purple Discord, just talking 90% of the day. So it's very hard to not find me. But yeah, if you need to contact me, Discord's right there. If you want to email me, you can just contact me on Judge Hub, and I'll send an email directly to me. And yeah, anything anybody wants to talk about, I'm all ears. Happy to help out.
Wonderful. Well, next time I'll reach out to you about how to get faster at playing on tabletop simulators. So look forward to that.
That's not me. That's all Oliver. I don't know how he does it.
look forward to that Discord message is all I have to say. All right.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of us here with the Judges of Rathe podcast, thank you for listening, and we hope to hear you soon.